I started Westminster Digital at the beginning of the year, actually. So I used to work at Sky, so I've done all of this sort of stuff with TV content. But we realised that there was quite a big gap in politicians knowing how to use social media and how to create good content. What we do, it's cross-party, so we don't focus on what the message is. That's down to the politicians, that's their area of expertise. We just deliver the content. So we work with all sorts of parties, so you can see we've got Labour, Conservatives, no Lib Dems up there, but there aren't many left. So it's content and community management for MPs and also for charities. And we do lots of think tanks, things like that. It's basically public sector, anything that's not corporate, basically. So let's go into this. Is that working? Yes. Okay, cool. So politics is all about communications, and social media is basically the greatest communications tool of all time. So we are trying to figure out how they can use it a little bit better than they're already doing. The 2017 election was when we actually saw social media get embraced more than ever before. Both parties, both of the big parties, spent more money on social media than ever has done in history. And it's the first time we've actually seen what we call digital first campaigning. So all of the campaigns were focused on digital content. But also not just the actual day-to-day campaigning. What you started to see is ministers and senior politicians, when they go out and give speeches like this, they don't necessarily focus on the content of the speech. They think, what are the short videos they're going to get clipped up? You know, what are the key takeaways? What are the sound bites that people are going to remember from this? So it's not so much of the long form stuff anymore. It's a lot more thinking what can be clipped up, what's the little sound bite. And you see it in Prime Minister's questions now. All of what's being done is actually just so it can be clipped into a 30-second video and put in the caption. You know, Corbyn says something, it's edited. May says something, it's edited. So social media is really impacting politics today. So what we also see as well is that failure in digital also means failure in politics. So it's a really, really risky area for lots of politicians now. But here's the point, you have to engage, you have to take the risk, because there's nothing worse than not engaging with social media. We've seen lots of politicians who steer away from it, and that's actually bad for them. So it was earlier this year, Robert Peston declared that social media was a digital arms race. And now there's a bit of a mad scramble with all the parties. They're trying to figure out how to use this political weapon and figure out the best way that they can actually utilize it. And social media has already been responsible for the rise and fall of many, many politicians. And the reason why they say at the moment Labour is winning is because of its traditional brand. It's seen as a younger party. It does tend to have more younger members. And the more social media savvy, you know, they're talking to people who understand how to do these things, how to retweet and stuff, whereas Conservatives tend to not to be. So if we look at some examples of when it goes wrong, one of my personal favourites is Ed Balls Day, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, and that is an interesting way to show not to do social media. But this is another one. How do I make this? If I click next, will it start playing?
Hello, my name's Greg Knight. I'm the Conservative candidate for East Yorkshire. There's a general election on the 8th of June, and I hope if you live in East Yorkshire that you'll vote for me. When you vote in an election, you're doing two things. You're choosing who is your local representative, but you're also choosing a Prime Minister. I hope you'll vote for me and support Theresa May. We want a strong and stable government, not a coalition of chaos led by Jeremy Corbyn.
You'll get accountability with Conservative delivery. Make sure this time you get it right. Vote for Greg Knight.
So, Greg Knight is a wonderful MP, but he is not the best content producer. And it's interesting because we wouldn't expect, you know, if we said to Greg Knight, go and make a TV show, and he couldn't do it, we would think, fine, you know, he doesn't know how to make TV shows. But for some reason, we seem to expect that politicians understand how to make social media content, when of course they have no idea what to do. So you can see the good thing about that is that he's embracing it. You know, that's better than not doing anything. There are many, many MPs that still don't have Twitter, don't have Facebook accounts. So he's embracing it, bless him. But the intention is there. But this is the problem as well in politics, is that often political communicators and communication managers things don't actually know how to do any modern digital communications. They are still used to doing the old way of booking someone on Andrew Marr in the morning and that then being done for the month, you know. So that's changing a lot. The crazy thing about politics is that for the last 100 years, political campaigning has not changed. You know, 100 years ago, they were writing leaflets and putting it through people's doors. And they still do that today. So what we are saying to all of these politicians now is that one social media post has the power of 10,000 leaflets. And you can't throw a social media post in the bin, which is exactly what happens to all of the leaflets I'm sure you'll get through your doors whenever there's a political election going on. So this is, oh, I've gone too far. So this was at a political conference, Conservative conference last year, when BuzzFeed did a big sort of piece about how bad the Conservatives are at social media. And they just don't get it. They just haven't figured out yet. And here's a example. Oh, these are together. But if we look at the one on the left, for me, I think that's probably a pretty good social media post. You know, they've got a hashtag in there. They've done a nice bit of blue. They've got a bit of yellow. Congratulations. But there's one big problem. The worst thing a social media manager can ever do. Chris Grayling is not the chairman of the Conservative Party. They announced the wrong person on social media. They mocked up this image. This must have taken them time. You know, they had time to check that he was the Conservative Party chairman. He is not. He is the Transport Secretary. So they messed that one up completely. And that's the key to think about, is double checking which content is going out on channels. And then we've got this lovely picture of Michael Fallon in a porter cabin at Conservative Party conference. And it's, you know, this is basic stuff. If you're looking at taking a picture, there's the rule of thirds that hopefully everyone knows about, that the head of someone should be in the top third of the picture. And ideally you shouldn't sort of startle them and grab a picture and sort of run away. But we know what happens with this. This has been, at conference, the Conservatives would have said, listen, we need to do social media. Here's a young intern. Here's a phone. Go and take some pictures behind the scenes. And this poor intern has got to go up to the Defence Secretary at the time and say, can I take a picture of you for Instagram, you know? So it's not the easiest thing in the world, but they are slowly embracing it and understanding that they've got to do these things. It's coming up to conference this year. We'll see what content comes out. Might be better. So here's an example of one of the videos we recently made with Ian Paisley, MP. He is from the DUP, so as I said, we work with all parties. But this is about showing his personality and actually moving away from the politics, because what we say to these MPs is that as soon as you're elected, you've won. You know, you are now the MP, but you have to represent the people that didn't vote for you as well. So now you've got to try and steer away from the politics.
Hello. Welcome to room 65 in the upper committee corridor of Parliament. This is my office. This is where I work when I'm in Parliament. If I'm not either in the chamber or at the select committee that I sit on. Let me give you a wee tour of some of the things I keep here. So I've got a few nice photographs. Recently I had a dinner with Michael Gove, and also one with my colleagues from Parliament and Priti Patel at a recent constituency event. On my notice board I have a number of reminder letters and my election manifesto that sent me here, so that I remember the things that I have to do for my constituents. I've got a couple of reminders around the office about what I do, and up here is a double-decker bus built in my constituency. I also have my sword. That's not to attack people. That was presented to me when I became a free man of the City of London. It was something that I really cherish. And then I've got a couple of pictures of my father and my brother and myself when we were a little bit younger, and a picture of my wife. One final picture is one of the Queen. God bless her. Thank you.
Basically, the idea of that sort of content, let me just go back to you, is to humanise the MP. You know, lots of politics is very sort of branded as evil very easily now, especially someone from the DUP. So we try and humanise them, show he's a person, you know, he's got pictures of his family there, and show some more light-hearted content. This is content, especially as an MP, you would never get the opportunity to go on a normal news programme like Sky or BBC and basically talk about these things, you know, show his sword and all this crazy stuff that he's got. But it's actually nice, you know, this is what people enjoy watching on social media. It's not him standing there saying, this is a policy that I want to implement and this is why. It's more light-hearted content that actually works better on social. And you can see here, this is not his, this is another MP's channel, but this sort of stuff in a month, this is the sort of figures that these MPs are reaching. And by creating content that appeals to more people than just the ones who already voted for you, you can really reach outside your audience. So things like an office tour video is really, really useful to do. It gets engagement, it gets people talking, you can have a bit of fun with it. So let's see. So the other sort of work we do is with charities and think tanks. And that is a little bit more interesting. So this is what, I don't know if you've ever seen this, this is the standard go-to for every charity event that ever happens in Parliament. They buy these weird things and ask MPs to stand in it and pose for a picture. And it doesn't really tell me anything why Damian Moore is supporting this charity. The only reason I know it's blood cancer is because it says in the hashtag there, which is in the image, not on the thing. So it's a bit of a mess. And this is what we like to recommend. Here's a video we do with Michael Gove. Big Tent Festival is what he's promoting. It's an event to talk about new ideas that happen in politics. So,
I'm delighted to be a supporter of the Big Tent Ideas Festival. George Freeman and Sally Morgan have brought together some of the most interesting people in British politics today to debate the issues which are of crucial importance to us all. The environment. How can we cope with a planet that is getting hotter and resources that are becoming scarcer every day? Democracy. How can we make sure that the political system, which is essential to human dignity and flourishing, is preserved and enhanced for the next generation? Capitalism. How can we make sure that the single best system for generating economic growth across the globe is reformed to make it fit for the next century? These are the essential questions that we'll be debating at the Big Tent Ideas Festival. I hope that you'll support it too.
So you get the idea. He there is standing to camera actually explaining why he supports this campaign. You're not just holding a frame up and saying, here I am, I've come to it, I've dropped into an event for 5 minutes. He's actually standing there and telling us why he supports the campaign and why you should support the campaign. This was so much more impactful for this event. And what we did then was utilise. So if any of you have, and this doesn't just have to be about politicians, it's about your key players, you know, who are your influencers in this area? So these are every single person that we got to talk about the Big Tent Festival in 30-second videos, you know, just explain why they're supporting it. And when you make good content like this and make the people look good, they're going to retweet it, they're going to put it on their channels. Damian Moore is not going to retweet that picture of him holding the weird frame. But all of these people have got thousands of followers. And then we see it in the results coming out on the Big Tent. You know, in a month, we got 800,000 impressions on that channel. And that's from really utilising other people's audiences, getting outside this. You know, this was an account that was just started with no followers that sort of reached huge amounts of people. And then it was the account most mentioned by MPs. So that's a really good way. It's not come on. There we go. That's a really good way to show how you can actually utilise, you know, and do this sort of big clap at once. Then the other thing that we're seeing at the moment is the rise of the social media politician, which is happening a lot. And we can't talk about social media politicians without talking about the big one over in the US. But actually, as an example, I wanted to show you is how you can appeal to the non-political. This is all about reaching outside of politics and engaging with people who say, think of the audience who enjoy things like keeping up with the Kardashians and stuff like that. So this is a video they did at the White House for Christmas at the White House. are very, especially in America, they're moving a lot more towards basically stealing what you guys are going to do and creating almost like movie trailers. You know, that is like a movie basically. It's like she's doing some movie like Home Alone in the White House. So that just shows that you can utilize the most sort of mundane day-to-day content and actually create something nice out of it with some nice camera shots and things like that. And then we see the same coming from the presidents. This is the one he put out recently.
Hurricane Florence was one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the Carolinas, one of the most powerful and devastating storms ever to hit our country. To the families who have lost loved ones, America grieves with you, and our hearts break for you. In moments of despair, we witness the true character of the American people. So true. Citizens all across our country rally together to rescue the stranded, to protect the innocent, and to restore hope to families who have experienced tremendous and unbearable loss. We will never forget your loss. We will never leave your side. We're with you all the way. And to all those impacted by this terrible storm, our entire American family is with you and ready to help, and you will recover.
It's happening all over the world. You know, you've got Macron doing it as well. Lots of politicians are embracing this idea of turning their lives into almost like a movie and doing trailers for what they do for the month. So if you have a look at what Macron does.
Donc le top, c'est quand votre bras baisse.
Voilà, vous ferez 3, 2, 1, et je vais...
Très bien.
Vive la République et vive la France.
Ça va mieux. Banco.
Les nouvelles routes de la soie, celles du XXIe siècle, doivent être celles de la justice et du climat. Thank you.
Bon, bravo. Les insulites, c'est les meilleurs.
You're coming. We have to make it in 2 minutes. C'est ça? Ok, là, ça. On y va? 3, 2, 1, top. Chers compatriotes.
We choose France.
Google chooses France.
Facebook chooses France.
We choose France. Choose France. SAP chooses France.
Ladies and gentlemen, my first message is that France is back. France is back at the core of Europe.
Au revoir. Merci à la relève. Bon courage à vous.
C'est la dernière part de langue que j'ai
Il avait
je
ça à fourrir.
je m'en suis servi pour venir vous voir.
Le début.
Oui, voilà, tout commence, on l'a dit tout à l'heure.
So you get the idea of what they're kind of doing. But it's that sort of stuff, you know, it's utilizing the content. This is, you know, if you were a content manager and you are running it for the French president, you're probably not going to get that much time for him to sit down and do a social media video for you. So utilize the fact that he's traveling all over the world. You can film, I mean, this is just filming a convoy, but they've edited it into a nice clip that really shows how you can make good content out of it. And then the last one to show you is what not to do. So this is the EU, and he's done some awful sort of graphics. This is taking it a little bit too far. So that's Donald Tusk on his social media. So yeah, there's lots and lots of things you can do with the amount of content you have. You know, if you can get videos of anything, you can edit it into something that's sort of worthwhile and entertaining is the key, I think, on social media. If you want engagement, you've got to create engaging content.